Yes, my eyes were shining. I had never seen such a luster in them before. Looked like I had cracked the code. My name is Ladi Ojas. Welcome to Skeletal Leap, a living adventure. Skeletal Leap transforms one's life into a personal heaven. Today's episode will tell you how I finally cracked the code of instant visual acuity, showing me every single thing crystal clear in the field of my vision far and wide for the first time in my life. I couldn't believe my eyes as they instantly started seeing crystal clear far and wide. It was miraculous, rather magical. I still remember it was on 12th December 2004 that it spontaneously happened. I had been standing on a certain spot on the road for quite some time, waiting for my wife to join me for doing some shopping together. And it was during this stretch that I became aware of seeing everything, including advertising kiosks fitted on electric poles far ahead, crystal clear to read. I hadn't seen so clear around nor read such small letters so far ever before in my life. I intentionally froze in my posture without even blinking my eyelids and kept enjoying my suddenly achieved visual acuity for as long as I could. Then, apprehensively, I blinked my eyelids once. To my utter disappointment, I was back to my habitual visual blur after the blink. For a moment, I wondered if I had dreamt what I had seen a moment ago. I tried to recreate whatever it was that I had gone through. My mind wasn't able to recall all the details of what my body had gone through during that brief span of time. So I left my mind aside and appealed to my body if it could recreate the experience once again. Fortunately, my body was still able to do it. I immediately froze again in my posture without blinking my eyes again. The visual acuity was back. I urged my mind to take notes of every single detail of what my body had undergone to reach that state. But it failed. It was too complex for my mind to understand all the maneuvers my body had gone through for doing what I was experiencing. I again blinked, and my body threw me back to my old visual blur. My mind kept watching my body maneuvers helplessly, unable to understand them sequentially. I befriended my body and requested it again to recreate its maneuver. The body's memory was intact, and it successfully did the job again. But every time I blinked, it threw me back to my old visual blur. I needed to understand every single step of the new maneuver so that I could analyze it in its details in order to synthesize it sequentially. That was the only way to keep it intact even after the blink that every time threw me back. But it was certainly too complex to tame it like that. Anyway, I thanked my body to take me back every time I requested it to do the needful. Nevertheless, I was stuck in a quandary. I wasn't able to know how to break through it. And then I saw my wife coming to join me for the shopping. I suspended my experiment for the time being, and we left the place for the market nearby. On returning home, the first thing I did was to order 2 Snellen charts, one for home and the other for my office down the road in front of my house. I fixed one on the wall in front of my seat at a distance of 10 feet from my eyes in my study room. As I looked at it from that distance, I couldn't even read the very first letter with the acuity that I had experienced on the road. But I knew that I could ask my body to maneuver itself, showing me clear before my next blink. As I did so, all the letters on the chart were crystal clear for my eyes to read them once, but only before I blinked the next. One can't keep one's eyes open without blinking them in between. And it was this that my problem was. I tried to recreate the maneuver in a conscious manner while trying to simulate it at a slow pace. I failed once, twice, thrice, every single time. But it didn't frustrate me. I was ready to find a needle in a haystack, how much ever time it took me to look for it. I was determined to crack the code that every time took me there. It was like I had the key, but I didn't know where the lock was. I had to look for the locks in my body that this key was able to open with one single maneuver. I just wanted to analyze the code and synthesize it to make it a permanent feature in the body. And then I could share it with the rest of the world for everyone to remove their glasses on their eyes. While I was trying to crack the code, I also kept looking for any kind of literature that could help me in accelerating the pace and the width of my research. Naturally, the first subject to investigate was ophthalmology. I revised it in detail once again, but it didn't help me much. It stuck to the same premises that it had always been, to including its claim that the errors of refraction, once contracted, could never be reversed. From there, I again moved on to naturopathy and the Bates method, both claiming that the errors of refraction could certainly be reversed. But as I had already tried them to the best of my capacity in my earlier years, I further moved away from them. Though I had already sided with the theoretical premises of Dr. William Horatio Bates, as far as the process of accommodation was concerned, I couldn't find much substance in his toolbox he had offered to follow. I was all in for his concept of central fixation of the eyes, but I didn't agree with him when he said it was achievable only via the central fixation of the mind. I had always been of the opinion that the central fixation of the eyes must have had its own independent path, which was biological rather than a mental one suggested by Dr. Bates. I further investigated meditation and yoga, but neither of them took me any closer to eyesight perfection. Then I got a reference from yoga that took me to another discipline named Chakra system. It talked about the flow of life energy named Kundalini getting blocked from flowing through the spine by the closed chakras, 7 in number. One of these chakras was named Third Eye Chakra that intuitively drew my attention. It was supposed to sharpen perception along with other functions it performed when it was opened. Perception is the outcome of sensing, which is done through 5 sense organs, the visual sense being the main among them. Hence, I hypothesized that it should be able to do something good to the eyes as well. Although the chakra discipline, being an esoteric system, talked only about their existence in the spiritual body and not in the biological one, another discipline helped me to build up a link between the chakras and the physical body. It was the theory of muscular armor founded and developed by Wilhelm Reich, earlier a close associate of Dr. Sigmund Freud. He had stated that these muscular armors were rigidified groups in 7 different segments. Segments were named ocular or eye-related, oral, cervical, thoracic, diaphragmatic, abdominal, and pelvic. These 7 segments clearly showed a correlation between the chakra system and the theory of muscular armor. But whereas chakras only talked about the spiritual domain, the theory of muscular armor was majorly grounded in the physical body. It also had the effects of these 7 biological segments on the mental phenomena shaping the character of a person. It encouraged me to look for the basis of chakras in the physical body in order to bring it down from an esoteric system to a biological one. If I could do it successfully, it would amount to turning them from an intangible concept to a tangible reality. I was able to do so by looking for their seeds in the muscular armors in the 7 segments of the body. Dissolving these armors would amount to opening these chakras in a tangible manner and healing all the corresponding segments of the body. It would also include the ocular segment, removing all kinds of errors of refraction in the eyesight. The best thing about dissolving these muscular armors or biological chakras was that it took care of almost every lifestyle disease that Wilhelm Reich was bothered about, not only in the biological but also in the mental domain. On top of it, both of them also talked of turning the blood flow of life energy, whether organ or kundalini, to a full throttle smooth flow from the pelvis through the spine to the top of the head, opening the door to the spiritual fulfillment. Wilhelm Reich, in his treatment module, used to dissolve them through deep massage, which I could never agree to. It amounted to try dissolving internal muscular armors through external means. I was of the opinion that such internal dissolution should be activated only through the internal means by the patients themselves. Only then would those dissolutions be permanent, otherwise, they could reappear after a certain duration of time, as always happens in case of treatments by hypnosis. Back to my study table in front of my Snellen chart, trying to crack the code to eliminate the errors of refraction in the eyes. Now I had a full psychosomatic background of knowledge behind what I was trying to do. I was absolutely clear that I had to crack the code in the biological domain alone so that it worked decisively for every single person in a time-specific manner. The only way was what I had started it with. That's a trial and its failure, another trial and its failure, the next trial and its failure, until I hit the jackpot with a trial and its success. There could always be 1,000 wrong answers to a question, but there could only be one that was right. I was really looking for a needle in a haystack. Yes, but there was a very big plus point that was added to my search after going through all this literature. I realized that the scope of my search had expanded beyond cracking the code to instantly dissolve every kind of eyesight blur alone. It had rather assumed a much bigger size now. In fact, it had turned into a search for a panacea, taking care of almost all kinds of lifestyle diseases, whether biological, mental, or else spiritual. I was not only looking for one single code now, but for an entire set of them for different ailments that humanity was struggling with. Yet there was a big benefit in focusing at the eyesight code the very first, as it had proven itself to be an instant cure with its coincidental appearance in my case. I turned back to my work table for further trials and failures. One of those days, as I was walking down from home to my office in the morning, I felt a strange upward pull on my skull. It was something like someone was pulling my skull up on both sides with one's palms to stretch them up to the top of my head. I had never sensed such an upward stretch on my skull before. It was quite enjoyable like a massage, but as it had happened on its own for the first time, it scared me a bit too. I opened my office and immediately sat down in front of the Snellen chart at a distance of 10 feet from it. And lo, I was able to read every line way much clearer than I had ever read through recreating my coincidental glimpse of clarity on 12th December 2004. I immediately blinked my eyelids, apprehending it would bring my visual blur back. But no, it didn't. I could blink any number of times, and the enhanced clarity of vision sustained itself every single time. Also, this time the letters appeared shining and more black than they ever had through recreating my coincidental glimpse of clarity. But what was it that had done so? Obviously, it was something related to the upward pull or stretch on my skull. But what exactly was it? I intuitively felt that my eyes were shining as well. I entered the toilet of my office where a mirror was hung on the wall and looked at my eyes. Yes, my eyes were shining. I had never seen such a luster in them before. Looked like I had cracked the code. But still, I couldn't figure out what it was that had activated this upward pull on my skull. Until I discovered that I couldn't claim I had cracked the code. I wanted to let that pull go so that I could know how to activate it again by trying to recreate it. I tried to let it go, but it wouldn't. Also, it had started tiring me now. It was already lunchtime. I went home and took a quick nap for a while after lunch. As I woke up after an hour or so, the pull had vanished. I immediately looked at the Snellen chart and found it was all blurred in front of my eyes. I recreated my coincidental glimpse of clarity and blinked my eyes once. It again went all blurred after the blink. I now decided to try recreating the upward pull on my skull, but failed. I tried every single thing I could do to my skull, but couldn't recreate that pull. I looked at my eyes in the mirror. There was no luster left in them anymore that I had witnessed in my office. Now my research had assumed a new dimension. I no more needed to recreate the coincidental maneuver in a conscious manner while trying to simulate it at a slow pace. I had already got a hint of what I needed to recreate the next, but I wasn't able to. Nevertheless, I kept trying. After a few days, the same pull appeared again on its own. I jumped with joy and ran up to my Snellen chart. Yes, I again read the same shining crystal clear letters in front of my eyes. Then I blinked my eyes and saw the same shining crystal clear letters again. I immediately ran up to the toilet and looked at my eyes in the mirror. Yes, they had the same luster I had seen in them the first time this pull had appeared. I decided not to sleep this time, unlike I had done the last time. Without losing time, I tried to analyze what it was that was creating the pull. I changed my face expressions and my body posture every possible way, but it didn't give me any hint. Then I came to realize that my attempts to analyze it were futile as it was already there. And it was so strong that it wouldn't vanish by any kind of maneuver. To analyze, I needed to know what it was that caused it to vanish. Unluckily, it was only sleep that would do so, and while sleeping, I wouldn't be able to ascertain what it was. So the only way left at my disposal was to synthesize it by trial and error again. But one thing was sure, that there were two things at work here. One was that had created the coincidental glimpse of clarity on 12th December 2004, and it was the one that wouldn't stay after a blink. The other was the upward pull on the skull that worked way better than the first and didn't even vanish after any number of blinks. And I hadn't yet been able to analyze either of the two. I was able to synthesize one of them, but without knowing what exactly I was doing. The other one, I was neither able to analyze nor synthesize. It came to me at its own sweet will. Also, it felt very enjoyable in the beginning, but started tiring the skull after a while. Now there were two different things that had a similar effect on the eyesight, the only difference being that one of them was way stronger than the other. The weaker one didn't tire, but the stronger one first enjoyably relaxed and then later started feeling as tiredness. Suddenly I hit upon an idea. Why shouldn't I try analyzing the tiredness as and when it started appearing? And right at the moment, it had already started appearing. Interestingly, this tiredness wasn't painful at all. It was rather the opposite of that. It was something you feel in your body muscles when you start doing physical exercise after a long gap of having lived a sedentary lifestyle. And it vanishes in a few days as you continue exercising. But the pull was also different from this in another way, that it felt very enjoyable in the beginning, which the exercise generated muscular tiredness missed. It simply meant that basically it was relaxing some muscles which were already under strain. How could relaxing a strained muscle feel like tiring it after enjoying its relaxation in the beginning? Yes, it does happen when you occasionally develop a sprain in your ankle or wrist or else in your neck. The muscle contracts and keeps paining even if you try to relax it. That's when it suddenly happens, and a sprain is always sudden. But suppose it's not a sprain, it's rather a slow and gradual contraction of a muscle which gets rigidified in its contracted state and remains like that for years together. It doesn't pain, and the body slowly and gradually starts accepting it as its natural relaxed state. But it's not really relaxed. It's only that its contraction has turned unconscious. This is what generates the unconscious domain of the body, very similar to the unconscious domain of the mind. Now, if we really want to relax this unconsciously contracted muscle, it will feel like getting stretched in an enjoyable way in the beginning and get tired when it felt like getting stretched for long. But suppose if we ignored this tiredness in its beginning stages, it would turn conscious of its contraction and would no more get tired if and when it fully went relaxed forever. This was what was happening with my skull muscles when they started feeling tired. I decided I wouldn't listen to my skull's appeal of getting tired and continue with relaxing its muscles, even if my quality of seeing crystal clear got compromised due to this perceived apprehension of pseudo tiredness. But this was just a reason addressing why these muscles felt tired when they were being relaxed via an upward pull, and nothing more than that. The real target of cracking the code for initiating the upward pull was still shrouded in mystery. I came back to my earlier thought process that mentioned now there were two different things that had a similar effect on the eyesight, the only difference being that one of them was way stronger than the other. The weaker one didn't tire, but the stronger one first enjoyably relaxed and then later started feeling as tiredness. Where could I find these two different things that had a similar effect on the eyesight, the only difference being that one of them was way stronger than the other? My thought process drew my attention back to the chakra system. It had mentioned there were two chakras that were located in the skull. They were named third eye chakra and crown chakra. It was also mentioned that the crown chakra was way stronger in its effect than the third eye chakra. What if my coincidental glimpse of clarity had used the third eye chakra alone? And what if my upward pull had used the crown chakra with or without using third eye chakra alone? I tried to look for ways to open these two chakras in the chakra literature available. But being an esoteric system, it miserably disappointed me. It spoke a language that didn't address the common sense at all. All its methodologies were shrouded in mysteries. It addressed more to a blind reverent faith than to the logic of common sense. I thought of discovering the processes of opening these two chakras myself on my own, alone. The best way to do so was to pinpoint the exact location where my skull was feeling the joy initially and the tiredness later with the upward pull. As I focused my attention at the pinpointed source, I found it to be on the two sides of the skull near the top of the left and the right earlobes. It seemed to be a pair of joints. Yes, it was a pair of temporomandibular joints that enabled mandible to move the lower jaw in various different orientations with the help of the muscles attached to them. I tried to move my lower jaw in these various different orientations, and one of them seemed to work. It further strengthened my skull's upward pull and increased the luster in my eyes. As I looked at the letters on the Snellen chart, I found them to be much clearer and way more black to read. I seemed to have reached very close to cracking the code. It looked very amusing to me. If it was true, it was the orientation of the lower jaw that was responsible for all the errors of refraction in the eyes, as well as for the code to correct these errors. I still remember how my wife reacted when I said this thing to her. She looked at me as if I had gone crazy and said, "You said this to me. Don't say it to anyone else. People will start making fun of you. Don't be a laughing stock for others." I kept looking back at her without uttering a word. It discouraged me. But it was working. What would I do? I decided to continue with my research. It struck to me that it was this central fixation of the eyes that Dr. Bates had always been trying for his patients to achieve through central fixation of the mind. But central fixation of the mind was a very abstract and an intangible thing to achieve. It didn't have any clear methodology to achieve in order to activate central fixation of the eyes. What all he had used as his toolbox hadn't really worked very well. It was a circuitous route. The code I was trying to crack wouldn't be circuitous. It would be tangible since it would be physical and not mental. It would aim at having a clear methodology which would be almost instant in its activation. Anatomically, the jaws aren't supposed to be oriented in a way that makes the upper jaw along with its denture overlapping the lower one, which, unluckily, is how the major chunk of humanity orients the two jaws along with their dentures like. They need to be in the same plane through their entire width with 2 to 4 millimeter distance between the two dentures in general. That is what provides the ultimate relaxation in the long run to the temporomandibular joints and their associated muscles that move these joints. The code had finally been cracked. Download the code of instant vision improvement by complete central fixation of the eyes in the resources section of Skeletal Leap Book 1, available on skeletalleap.com/the mind-body connection. This is what activates the complete central fixation of the eyes. It was this that my upward pull in my skull had activated, gifting me with a better than 20/20 vision at the distance and a better than N6 vision while reading near. But then what was my first coincidental glimpse of clear vision that I had spontaneously stumbled upon on 12th December 2004? Now, in retrospect, I can completely analyze it. It was actually an incomplete central fixation of the eyes that I had undergone. But even that was, and is, quite effective. Let me first tell you from the chakra perspective. Whereas the complete central fixation was the opening of the third eye chakra along with the crown chakra, the coincidental glimpse of clear vision on 12th December 2004 had been activated by a spontaneous opening of the third eye chakra alone. In the language of jaw orientation, it was only the incisors aligning in the same plane with the distance between them. This one is much easier to activate, and this also shows quite clear. But its limitation is that it sees the clarity in a much narrower zone and doesn't provide this clarity wide enough. It also doesn't show the letters on the Snellen chart extra black in color. Moreover, it doesn't turn the eyes shining with a luster in them. But that hardly matters when you are getting gifted with an almost instant clear vision. In case one faces a lot of resistance while trying to achieve complete central fixation of the eyes, one may adopt this incomplete central fixation temporarily until the complete central fixation becomes one's first nature, taking care that blinking doesn't make you lose your incisor alignment. Download the code of instant vision improvement by incomplete central fixation of the eyes in the resources section of Skeletal Leap Book 1, available on skeletalleap.com/the mind-body connection. I wish Dr. Bates had this physical tool in his toolbox, activating central fixation of the eyes directly without trying to achieve it through central fixation of the mind. If he had, his assertion to get his theory of accommodation approved by ophthalmology would have been much stronger, and the errors of refraction could have been eliminated the world over by now. He wouldn't even have needed the rest of the tools in his toolbox. And there is another very interesting fact that he would have learned. Just like he thought that it was central fixation of the mind alone which could activate central fixation of the eyes, the opposite is equally true. In other words, central fixation of the eyes also plays a very big role in activating central fixation of the mind. I say it plays a very big role and not the entire role because there is another central fixation in the picture. And this one is called the central fixation of the body. Don't bother if you aren't getting what it means at present. I will be dealing with it as the story of my memoir proceeds further in the next episodes. Here I want to add that it wasn't Bates' method alone that would have been benefited 100 years ago with this physical approach. This approach can also benefit the methodologies of opening various different chakras in a tangible manner even today. If it happens so, the vitalistic hypothesis of the esoteric chakra system can establish itself as a verified science working as a panacea for almost all types of lifestyle diseases. I can say this so confidently because the story of my memoir didn't end on having cracked the code of eliminating all the errors of refraction alone. It proceeded further, which my audience will unearth in the next episodes to come. Thanks for listening to this episode of Skeletal Leap, a living adventure. In the next episode, I will tell you how and why I decided not to stop after cracking the code of instant visual acuity and kept trying to crack more codes as I had an ancient esoteric system of faith yet untouched by scientific investigation at my disposal now. Be a part of Skeletal Leap community. Subscribe to Skeletal Leap newsletter. Click on the link in the description to subscribe.